All right, buenasera, what's poppin'? It's your boy Big Rich, fresh off the streets of Queens, New York City. You know what time it is? It's time to conduct some business. Now, this next article, I held off on it for a little bit. Me and Shattered had to go back and forth, figuring out how we were going to do this. If you guys remember, we did an article, um, maybe 2 weeks ago, and it was from Jerry Capisci. It was Gangland, and he did an article where basically, he said that because Stephen Crea refused to take a 18-year plea deal and asked for 15, is why basically everything fell apart, and is why everybody is going to get, is going to be sentenced to even more years, possibly when it comes down to sentencing. And I remember when I read the article because of course, Stephen Crea's son, Dominic, is a not only a friend, but he is a contributor to this machine of ours. And even before I even knew Dominic, you could go back and look at the videos. It was basically just, we were saying it from the beginning. It was injustice. That's the only way to describe what happened. So even before we met Dominic, we were already, we already saw what the government and FBI were doing by producing all these so-called witnesses. But then, Dominic and his platform and this platform developed a relationship. And when the first article came out, I remember reading it, and I said to myself, and sometimes your first instinct is always your best. And I said, hey, this this doesn't really paint, Stephen Crea. It basically puts all the blame on him, right? Like that's how I felt. So when we were reading the article, there was a certain paragraph that Mr. Capisci wrote, and I had to say that's hearsay. Now, when the article came out, of course, Dominic reached out and wrote a letter to Jerry Capisci, and instead of Jerry Capisci writing a letter back to Dominic, he comes out with this article. Mob Story Season 2, Big Rich, throw some smoke in the air, let's get into it. Not only we are going to read the article, but I have an exclusive reply from Dominic Crea to the article, which I will read after I do this video. Mob Skyon. Not my dad's fault that his co-defendants are facing life behind bars. Of course, Jerry Capisci, we throw respect on your name. Gangland, you already know how we do. Luchese wiseguys, Stevie Wonder, Crea, and Christopher Londonio were each acquitted of one count in their racketeering and murder trial. Crea of attempted murder and Londonio of attempted prison escape. And Crea won a dismissal of another attempted murder count before the trial. But as we wrote last week, both face life in prison today because Stevie Wonder declined a global deal offer of 18 years that would have enabled Londonio to get a plea deal of 30. Gangland stands by that account, despite an angry missive from Crea's son Dominick, a paralegal, that our report was completely false and that a 30-year plea offer that Londonio received, as well as the one for 20 years that forming acting boss Matty Madonna received from the government, was separate and apart from my father's decision. As Gangland reported last week, a court filing by Londonio's attorneys that was filed under seal in August and unsealed after the verdict was announced, and it clearly stated that the plea offer that the getaway driver received from the feds was part of a global plea deal with Crea and Madonna. Dominic Crea noted that jurors rejected testimony by two mob turncoats, Bonanno Capo Petey BS Lavaglio and associate Anthony Mama's Boy Zocalilo, and acquitted his dad of plotting to kill a rival gangster who dissed the elder Crea in 2012. Dominic, who selected and worked closely with his dad's defense team, also stated that he was confident that the murder conviction of the death of Michael Meldish would be reversed on appeal. It can happen, but winning an appeal of a mob-connected racketeering murder conviction carrying a mandatory life sentence is an exception to the rule. That's not to say that Crea and Londonio as well as co-defendants Madonna and Terrence Ted Caldwell, don't have viable appeal issues for their convictions for the 2013 gangland-style slaying of Meldish, the former Purple Gang leader. One major complaint by lawyers, which led to motions for a mistrial, was that the White Plains Federal Court Judge Kathy Seibel, Desgraciadas, allowed prosecutors to change the theory of the Meldish murder after the defense poked holes in the alleged reasons for it and how the order to kill Meldish was passed to the hit team. Judge Seibel denied Crea's motions for a mistrial on the grounds that the grand jury had not approved any alternative theory, including the government's last-ditch argument that it did not need to prove that Stevie Wonder knew of or directly participated in the murder in order to find him guilty. The jury could convict Crea of the murder, she told the panel, if the jurors found that it was reasonably foreseeable that another member of the crime family would commit a murder. Reasonably foreseeable. That's just another word for possibility, if you ask me. The court's endorsement of the prosecution's last-minute flip-flopping is only one of many errors that occurred to deprive Mr. Crea of a fair trial, said DiPietro, who sought a mistrial on at least 5 separate occasions during the month-long trial. During a sidebar after prosecutor Hagen Scotton called Londonio's lawyer John Marangolo a liar in front of the jury, and the judge scolded the prosecutor for his admittedly improper remark, DiPietro complained that the cumulative effect of several Seibel rulings and Scotton's conduct were depriving his client of a fair trial. And the way the events have proceeded, said DiPietro, I think the right word is pretending that he's getting a fair trial. During the rebuttal summation by prosecutor Alexandra Rothman, lawyers for all 4 defendants objected to her arguments about their clients for one reason or another and sought a mistrial. DiPietro said the prosecutors made so many improper statements that there were too many for me to catch, promising after that, reviewing the transcript, he would file a written motion for a mistrial, which would most assuredly be just part of a full-bore appeal of his conviction. But as honest members of the defense bar will say, it forced to testify under oath. It's much harder for a reputed mob figure to get a new trial when he's been wronged at trial than a garden variety defendant without a mafia stigma. Federal criminal defense lawyers have sadly learned over the years that defendants in organized crime cases are treated differently than all other defendants by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, said veteran barrister Matthew Mari. They are more than prejudiced against such defendants. In this millennium, there have been only 2 such reversals by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, and both of those decisions, one in Brooklyn of 2 Genovese associates and the other in Manhattan of 3 DeCavalcante soldiers, came more than a decade ago. The Genovese associates Carmelo Carmine Pizza Polito and Mario the Baker Fortunato won their reversals in 2004. The convictions of wiseguys Philip Abramo, Stefano Vitabili, and Giuseppe Pino Schifelliti were tossed in 2008. Can Stephen Crea and his co-defendants be so lucky? It's a stretch, but maybe we're due for a surprise. Second Circuit reversal of a mob murder trial in White Plains Federal Court. All right, so salute to Jerry Capisci for the article. Again, honestly, I think the honorable thing to do would have been just to reach out before putting out the article. Of course, a journalist has to put out an article. That's it. So please allow me to read a statement by Dominic Crea in response to this article by Jerry Capisci. It says, Rich, I thank you for reaching out to me directly. In regards to Capisci's article, he had stated he stands by his story based upon the source he had obtained it from, which was a submitted filing. I stand by my story of what my father received directly and how it related to the defendants. The truth is, Jerry himself is not wrong, as he merely cited a filing. What I am stating is that the filing was inaccurate. I do wish Mr. Capisci would have checked with my father's counsel prior to releasing his story for complete clarification. Unfortunately, that did not happen. The plea negotiations were not global, whereas all defendants were contingent on one another. That is not how the pleas were presented. Different defendants were offering different pleas with various conditions. There were four defendants, and they were not all tied to one another as part of a global deal. In addition, as with all plea offers, the incarceration time is only one piece of the equation. The defendants must also agree to a specific allocation verbiage, which is another dynamic to a plea. Neither the time nor the allocation would have been something to contemplate for my father, who is 100% innocent of these charges. Taking 18 years at 72 years of age is a life sentence, and therefore no real offer at all was given. Once again, you reaching out for clarification on my position is appreciated. Dominic Crea, founder of Justice Technology Professionals, and of course, son to Stephen Crea. So, Dominic, first of all, thank you for allowing us to read your statement. And I think everything that needed to be said has been said. Of course, this platform respects Jerry Capisci intensely. We love your articles. Obviously, we read them, and we tell people to go to your website. We tell people to buy your books. We tell people to, support you with nothing in return. We ask for nothing. Upset. Please continue, putting out more articles. Dominic, again, thank you very much. Salute to everybody at the Justice Tech Pros. Of course, tonight's show is sponsored by Dominic and his crew. Mob Stories 2. Everybody have a good evening. Thank you for tuning in. Salute. See you guys Friday morning for Waking Up with Ruckus.